And then we will record as well.
Hello.
All right, here we go. We're going to get this party started. We're going to record on the computer. All right, super excited here. We are recording. We are live. This is the Coaching Matters Group Coaching Program. I am your host, Brian Cain, and super excited today to bring on a former college baseball teammate of mine. He was actually a two-sport athlete at the University of Vermont, playing baseball and soccer, and he is the athletic director at Tampa Prep, a school down in Tampa, Florida, and we're talking about Chris Lavoie. And today, Chris is one of the top athletic directors, also a mental performance coach who's worked with the University of Tampa, two-time NCAA national champion volleyball program. He's worked with professional baseball players. And Chris is going to talk about establishing the right culture and enhancing your culture, something that he's done at schools from New Hampshire all the way down to Florida as an athletic director at different stops along the way. And super excited to have him join us here today. So thanks for being with us on the Coaching Matters Group Coaching Program. Chris Lavoie, appreciate you joining us, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. And thanks to everyone that's here. I know this is a special day being Valentine's, so I'm sure your spouses will want this to be short and sweet, and I'll do my best to give you some great information and keep it as short as possible.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I appreciate you being here, and I think one of the things that's been really cool kind of following your career, since you were an AD in New Hampshire and then kind of coming down to Florida, is one of the things that you've done along the way is you've been really, really successful at establishing a culture for your coaches and for your athletes at the different schools you've been at. And I think at Tampa Prep, you've done as good a job as you have anywhere else. You've also done as good a job as any athletic director I've ever seen in high school sports. And we've got some athletic directors here, Russ Waterman from Eastmont High School in Washington, who does a tremendous job. Kevin Guzzo, who's at St. Joseph High School, has done a tremendous job. And the great part about what you do is not only does it work as a high school athletic director, but it works as a high school coach in your program following the same process. It works as a business owner with the business that you lead following the same process, and it works for you as an individual. So what I'm really excited about learning tonight is how you establish that right culture in the programs that you've had a chance to be a part of. So yeah, I'll just let you take it from here, and glad you're with us.
Yeah, thanks again, Brian. And, I think part of this is my background in athletic administration was as a phys ed teacher, part-time, and a part-time athletic director. And I did put a PowerPoint together, which I don't like PowerPoints, but I think it's a good visual one to keep myself on track and give bullet points. And at the same time, to allow each of you to kind of see the process that I've gone through. And when I was an AD up in New Hampshire, like Brian said, as a part-time phys ed teacher, part-time athletic director, I don't think I did things well. I think that what I did was I focused on to make sure we had buses, to make sure there were officials there, and to make sure we just had coaches in place, and never understood what the term culture meant. So if anybody had asked me early in my career, how's the culture at your school? I think just a default answer would be, well, it's great. We won a state championship last year. Our team's really good this year. But I don't know if I never really knew what the definition of culture was. And I think that we were succeeding just by putting talent out there. And I think that everyone in here probably knows that talent is short-term, and the culture was what kind of gives you the long-term results. And I would also say that, like many of you, I learned a lot through my failures. And that's what I think got me to where I am at Tampa Prep. And I really think there's a template in place right now that's worked well for me, that I finally bought into, and that coaches have finally bought into. So, through my failures and through being the sponge of just listening to what others have done and what's worked for them, has kind of got me where I am now. At the same time, I'd say I'm just one piece of the puzzle. As athletic directors, as head coaches, if you don't have buy-in from your stakeholders, it doesn't matter what you do. So it's really, really important for you not to just pour it out to be the dictator that says, do it because I said so, but to make your stakeholders be a part of that process so there is buy-in there. And, most recently at Tampa Prep in Tampa, we've got
Chris, if I can jump in here, are you wanting to show a PowerPoint? Because we don't see that on the screen.
Yeah, I can do that. Of course.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, as I just think, I know if there's a visual, it's going to be, easier, I think, for our coaches here to be able to follow this. And there we go. Perfect. So now we can see your job is not perfect. Excellent. So if you want to present that, that'd be great for everybody to see. Brilliant. Thank you.
Can you see that all right, Brian?
Yep. Perfect.
So, and I think that what really hit me most recently, this is my 4th year in Tampa Prep, is we've got an affluent community in Tampa, Florida, downtown Tampa. And Tony Junji came into our gym, and, I went up to him and I had the 30-second elevators question to ask him of, hey, Coach Dungy, welcome to the gym. Can you tell me what your thoughts are on culture as a head coach? And he kind of looked at me, smiled, and he said, Chris, I've never had that question asked me before, in a gymnasium packed with people. I'm trying to watch my son play. He said, but let me tell you about culture. He said, when I took over the Colts, I had one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and we couldn't win games. He said it took into my 2nd and 3rd year when I finally had a culture built that dealt with success, that it wasn't about putting the best people on the field. It was about putting the right people in place, and that we had teammates that supported each other, that encouraged each other, that had great practices, that bought into our culture, which is what led us to a Super Bowl and which led us to success. And then last year, Joe Madden came and spoke with our baseball team, and I had the same conversation with him. And he talked about, and I did a podcast most recently about something called the Cubs Way. And Joe Madden is a disciple of the mental game and of culture. And he will self-admit that he may not be the best coach, but what he does is he tries to put every single person in his department, and that means the front office to the players in the field to the coaches, into buying into culture, into a shared set of beliefs and philosophy. So I figured that when the best coaches, some of the best coaches in the world are doing that, and we've all heard that, culture eats strategy for breakfast, that we need to start putting more time into culture. So the first thing I want to do is, if all of you can see those 9 dots right there, if you have, just visualize it in your mind, or if you can put those down on a piece of paper, is to start thinking outside the box. And if you can, in 4 lines, connect all of those dots without taking your pen or pencil off the paper. So we'll do this like for 15 seconds, maybe try it once or twice. Put your 9 dots down there, get your pen or pencil. Once you have it on that paper, connect all 9 of those dots without taking your pen or pencil off the paper. And I can't see all of your hands because I get the PowerPoint in front of me. So if someone can do it, great. So what we want to start doing is start thinking outside the box. And that's really about the mental game as well, and as culture. So there is a way to do it. And what you want to do is get yourself outside those dots, go off the paper, because everyone tries to stay inside the grid, right? So when you're talking about building culture and you're talking about the mental game, whatever it may be, start trying to do what others aren't doing and think outside the box. And I'm going to ask every athletic director, I know there's coaches in here, athletic directors in here, maybe some business people. How many of you can answer the following questions? What is your school mission? And you don't have to raise your hand, but I just want you to think about that. What is your school mission? And I'll tell you right now, to be completely honest, I don't know what our high school mission is. I know it involves 5 words: think, create, be yourself, aspire to excellence, and go beyond. But with those, there's a lot more terminology. I'm going to ask you the next question. How many of you know what your school's core principles are? What % of your student body is on an athletic team? What is your athletic department's mission? And a lot of people pause there and say, well, is that different from the school mission? Some schools won't allow that to happen. I'm lucky enough where I had a headmaster that said, do your thing, basically. And I think it's really, really important for the athletic department to have a separate mission than the school mission. And what are your athletic department's core principles? Now, some of you may have these and some of you may not, but that's kind of why we're here today. And lastly, what are the goals and vision of your athletic department? And that goes right into what is the MVP process, or we're going to talk about being the MVP process. I could not tell you what my former school's or school mission was, the one before that, or even the current one. I also could not tell you what most business missions are, and most people can't, because they're so long that you can't remember them. So in this, as we go through this, I would tell you, when you think about mission, you want to make it something that you can remember, something short, something sweet. And at Tampa Prep, our mission is Terps for life. Very simple. If you ask any athlete on school, what's our mission, they would know it. If you ask any coach on campus what our mission is, they would know it. And if you ask stakeholders and parents, they would also probably know it just because they see it so much and it's so easy to remember. Why is an athletic culture important? I'm not going to read through all these, but the most important thing is, I think that there was a stat or a survey that said 80% of coaches were named as the most influential person in a high school student's career. So college students were asked who was the most important person in your high school career. 80% named a head coach or a coach as the most influential person in their high school career.
Hey, Chris, I want to hop in right there if I can for a second, because what you just said, I think is the backbone reason why we're doing Coaching Matters, why Fundraising University and their CEO, Mike Mahoon, sponsors Coaching Matters for an every other week group coaching program, is because college students, 80% of them said the most influential person in their life up to this point, 18 years old or so going into college, was a coach. Unbelievable. Not unbelievable. Very, very believable, but staggering statistic. I thank you for sharing that.
Of course. And, athletic culture and everything I put there, there aren't English sections, there aren't math sections in a newspaper, but there's a huge sports section, and we have ESPN, we have all these, 8 of them that all we do is look at sports. And unfortunately, the most thing we have news on is incidents of poor conduct, of ineligible students, of people getting arrested, of fights in stands. So it brings out the negative in all sports. So at the high school level, our job is to create cultures that reinforce positive behaviors. And at this last thing is that it's the only event where we bring people outside our campus onto campus. So everybody thinks about your school, how they see your athletic programs. Are they clean? Are they dirty? Are you well behaved? Are they good sportsmanship or poor sportsmanship? How are your spectators? So everyone outside your school, when they come onto your campus, it's for an athletic event. And I want to talk about, for the athletic directors in here, what is the job of an athletic director? In the state of Florida, if we have an ineligible player on the field, we get fined heavy dollars and we forfeit games. And I'm sure that's the case with every state in the country. You have eligibility for students. 2 is transportation. It's really simple, but it takes up a lot of time to make sure we have buses to events. 3 is scheduling. You got to make sure we have an opponent. You got to make sure we fill the games. And that takes a big part of our day as well. Make sure when we have officials for every game, making sure they're showing up on time. Field maintenance. It's a daily thing of a sprinkler head's broken. Something may happen. You got to put the lines down. The grass wasn't mowed. The hiring of coaches and the retention of coaches. And that's a big part where you want to have interviews set up and make sure you're hiring not the best people, but like Joe Madden said and Tony Dungy said, hiring the right people. Marketing of your athletic programs. In the state of Florida, like everybody else, we can't recruit. So you have to do a great job marketing so you have people interested coming to your school. Communication, especially in this day and age with social media, email, every day is communications to parents, to stakeholders about cancellations, about postponements, and fundraising for mostly public schools. We're a private school, so we're actually not allowed to fundraise, but many teams and schools have to fundraise to support all of their athletic programs. And the last question I have, if culture is so important, is after doing those first 9 things, is how much time do we as athletic directors, coaches, principals, business people dedicate to the development and focus on the culture within our programs? And the answer to that is probably very little. At least that was the case for me, and probably still is the case. I try to put as much time as I possibly can into the culture, and it's not as much as the other things. The MVP process, and Brian, and I'll tell you that my key to success is surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, that know a lot more about the MVP process and things. And Brian, Cain, and I have been friends for over 20 years. So my key to success is to get Brian in your 5 top of best friends, and you'll get a lot of information from him. And that's been really my secret to success, is being great friends with Brian. But what I found is that the MVP process, if you have one of these people in this boat pulling in the wrong direction or is off just by 1 degree, in the short term, you're going to survive. But if this boat is going from Florida to Maine, that boat is going to be off by hundreds and hundreds of miles. So you can get away with things in the short term, but you have to have everybody on the same page. When I took a job at Tampa Prep, one of the first things I asked every head coach was, what is our mission and what are our goals? Every coach on staff had great answers, but they were all different. And what I found was that every head coach, was like on their own island, where we had the soccer coach, a basketball coach, a wrestling coach, a tennis coaches, all with great answers, all with great visions, all with great missions, all with great core principles, what they thought was important, but they weren't the same. So we didn't have shared terminology. What we had was crossover athletes saying, well, the rules are different here than they were in the last season. Well, yeah, that isn't important to this team, but it was important to the last team. So we were losing so much of core principles being lost in translation or lost from season to season. So there are 4 stages of buy-in, which you may have heard Brian speak about before. And this is what I will say that was the most important part, is you can't just say, here's what we're doing. You need to make people own it and be a part of that process. 1 is, this is not for me. 2 is, it is okay for others. 3 is, I'll try it. And 4 is, I can't believe I did it any other way. When you involve your coaches, involve the stakeholders in developing your MVP process or your core principles, they're going to then say, I'm going to try to do this, and then they'll have buy-in. So you want to have everyone on your staff be a part of the process, and then they'll own into it a little bit more.
Another way to say that, Chris, that I've seen successful is that people don't get down on what they're in on. Right. So if they're in on participating in the creation of your culture or your MVP process, they're more likely to be in on that once it's created.
So I'm sure many of you have heard what the MVP process is. And the M is mission, the V is vision, and P is the core principles. So the telescope part is, what's the big picture? What is the mission? And for Tampa Prep, and again, you guys are all going to want to develop your own, but I'm going to go through ours just so you can see what it is, what it looks like, and what works for us. At Tampa Prep, as I said before, our mission is Terps for life. And we hashtag that on everything we send out. Hashtag Terps, the number 4 life. And the way we came up with that was really Brian came to campus. So I did hire an outside consultant because I felt like that would make me a part of the process and not the person leading it. And that made me be on the same page as them, or the same level as them. And what we did was we did a Google survey, and we asked every stakeholder, every coach, every player, and some administration, what core principles do they feel is important for our student athletes to have when they leave the program or leave the school. And we had hundreds of answers. So we took those hundreds of answers in the Google survey and basically put them into a template of saying, honesty and trust are pretty much the same thing, so we'd give them check marks. And we basically just ranked everything from 1 to 50 of what people thought was important. That allowed us to say, okay, these 15 core principles stick out as being the most important to our coaches, to our stakeholders, to our players, and to our administration. That turned into our core principles. And we took terrapins, shortened that into terps, and then we took 3 core principles off each letter. TERPS, 3 T's, E's, R's, P's, and S's. So those were developed by the coaches, but we use a template that Brian brought to us in his MVP process. This made it so it wasn't an ownership from me or Brian, but that they gave us that information, and then we were allowed to get able to get our core principles from that. And then when you go into clarity of core principles, you can see what they are there, the TERPS, DERPS, and now it's about, what do they mean? So, if I asked every athlete in our school right now, what does energy mean to you? They may or may not say bring the juice, but this template is available to every coach and every athlete. And we have hand signals for each one of those. I don't want to bore you and go through those, but every single one of our core principles has a hand signal with it. So now coaches and athletes, as a way to remember it, when we have in the assemblies every Friday, I'll go up there and I may go through those and get the crowd all fired up, but they'll give them back to me. So our student athletes, I would say, probably know most of these. I'm not sure I could say that because there's 15 of them. And I would say that 15 is a lot. So what I found in year 1, which was the trouble part, was that I was expecting coaches and athletes to remember all 15 of these, implement them into their practices or into their season. And the feedback was, it's too much. So what we did this year through trial and error was have every team go through kind of a team bonding thing where they would pick one of each one of these if they thought was important to their season. So the girls volleyball team said, well, important to us is trust, energy, responsibility, present, and service. And we would make a poster for them to have at practices and we'd put it up. So those were the 5 they took this year. And it was really difficult for them to remember 15. They said it's taken too much time. And that's why we simplified it for them to take just 5, take 1 off each letter.
So each coach gets to pick with their program which of the core principles they want to install in their program. Is that right? As an athletic director, you kind of have, here's our 15 principles, and then each coach gets to pick with their teams what they want to focus on for principles for that year.
For that season, correct.
Yeah.
So and so these will be different. So the volleyball team has, the 5 I just mentioned, which may or may not be right. Going into basketball season, they would do that same activity where that team and coach would then say, what is important to us this year? Is it trust, team, or toughness? And the girls basketball team may say, well, you know what, we need to come together more as a team, right? So that will make that one of our T's and core principles for this season. Our energy's been low at practice. We got to get it for every game. We got to get for every practice. We got to get for everything we do. So let's go with energy. Let's bring the juice. So that's what they would do, Brian, was they would go through and pick 1 off each letter. We would then take the Terps and put that into a poster for them, or they would do it themselves, and they would just carry that through the season. Next season, they would go through that same process with a new group, and they may keep the same or they may change them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Talk, and I know you got more to go through, so we'll come back to the video that you put together about the hand signals and kind of share a link to the podcast for Terps for Life, because it's really, really great content in the way that you're kind of bringing this to life on a daily basis. But we'll kind of get to that. I'm sure that's in your presentation.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that the MVP process, and you may be able to answer this, Brian, how many of these people know that? Because I don't want to bore people with what the MVP is. If they know it, I just like to bring in the clarity and how you promote it.
Yeah, well, I think we've talked a lot about the MVP process. If there's one thing that's been discussed on every call, I think it's that. But to bring that to life and get them to get our Coaching Matters group and community to hear you talk about MVP process and how you established it is only going to reinforce for them how they can go about doing that.
Perfect. So with the MVP process, again, we came up with the mission, right? Terps for Life, the core principles as a part of that. And we just went through the process of how we did that. And the last part is a vision, which we do have athletic department vision, but then on top of that, each team has separate, vision as well. But we do have a set there. So I'm going to try to just get to, I'm going to stop sharing, I think, and then reshare.
There you go. So you're no longer sharing.
Good.
And while you're getting that figured out, I'm going to take a minute here just to want to welcome everybody to the Coaching Matters Group Coaching podcast and program sponsored by Fundraising University. And want to take time to just say thank you to any current Fundraising University coaches and administrators joining us on the call today. As you know, Fundraising University is the top high school fundraising company in the United States, helping to raise over $150 million for programs since its inception in 2009. And just want to again thank Fundraising University and their owner, Mike Bahoon, as the official sponsor for the Coaching Matters Group Coaching Program. So current coaches, if you'd like to become a Coaching Matters ambassador coach in your state and earn between $5,000 and $20,000 part-time, contact Mike Bahoon at fundraisingu.net to inquire about our new ambassador coach program. And I'll make sure I post that here inside of our chat. So if you want to contact Mike to find out how to become an ambassador coach, be great for you to join the Fundraising University team. So Chris, we can see your screen here and it looks like you're pulling up the Tampa Prep Championship culture.
Yeah, so this is just the final version of the MVP process and the Tampa Prep culture. So we do share this with athletes and coaches. And as you can see, the MVP process is there, the mission being Terps for Life. The vision, and it's a staircase there of all of our athletes and coaches, is to be a Terp today. What does it mean to be a Terp today? Isn't to follow rules and policies, but to live above the line. And that is actually enhanced and reiterated by all of our coaches. And our strength coach is a huge proponent of this. So if you went into our performance center, and Brian's been there 2 years ago, you would see a very generic weight room that had the treadmills, the old bikes, and some equipment. And then we hired a new strength coach, and he has painted the walls. He's put in the core principles on the wall. And Brian may have a picture of that. I don't have it, Brian, of what it looks like now. And he reinforces what it's like to live above the line. So he's one that we actually have partnered with our coaches. So it's not just coming from coaches and us, but also our strength coach, and every one of our athletes is in the weight room on a regular basis. So he's the one that really pushes living above the line and not living in limbo.
Yeah, I'm searching for those pictures here, but I'll see if I can dig those up here, Chris. If you can maximize, maximize your screen there by hitting enter full screen, we'll be able to see that. There you go. Brilliant.
And then when you get to the point of having it, what I found is that a lot of times it's been just lost in translation, that the coaches say they don't have time to push all this information. So I'd say the most important part after you go through the MVP process is to market, to make it visual, to put it on scoreboards, to put it on floors, to put it wherever you possibly can. So it's a daily reminder of what those core principles are. I'm lucky enough that we have a sports information director, and he has been instrumental in making sure that we get this information out there on everything we do. So if you go to our website, you're going to find that everything we do is hashtagged. Through Twitter, through the website, and all of our social media. So we have the marketing part. This is working a little slow here. Sorry about that. The marketing part is that everything that we have and do. We have put our core principles and mission everywhere. So I'm not going to be able to pull it up because it's not going to. But if you actually can look at our scoreboard right there.
Good.
Yeah, good.
And while you're pouring those up, Chris, what I'll do here is I'll share my screen and kind of show everybody a little inside of your weight room. So as we keep going here, as you're searching for that. So here inside of Chris's weight room is an example of their core principles put on a wall. So just simply, black walls, red lettering. Here's the S's. And then obviously here's the R's, right? So on different spots on the wall, inside of the squat rack, they have their terps. And then ironically, like just one of the guys I coached at SMU in the football team, Justin Lawler, plays for the LA Rams. And he sent me a picture of their core principles, right? So basically he's like, hey, we have an MVP process with the LA Rams. And he says, and outside we want to be people of character who have high standards that communicate and follow the process. He says, on the field, we want to be relentless, mentally tough, consistent, and connected. And we always want to put we over me. So I think when you listen last night, right, and Matthew Stafford gets interviewed, and they ask him, hey, you came here from Detroit, talk about this. And he goes, man, our locker room is connected. And Sean McVay, they asked him about him, the 36-year-old Super Bowl winning head coach. And he said, he connects with each one of us. How does he connect? He connects because he communicates. He connects because he has character. He connects because he's going to set the standard and live the standard. So I just thought that was fascinating to hear, a Super Bowl winning quarterback talk about a lot of the same things that we're talking about here on tonight's call. So Chris, back to you, man, if you want to keep kind of teaching us about Terps for life, or we can kind of go into some questions that are coming in from our Coaching Matters group coaching program.
Yeah, I'll just throw a couple more things, Brian. I think I've got this figured out now. I just couldn't see it. When I go back to the marketing part, so if you go to our athletic website, which is instrumental, because now you're going to hit parents and everyone that visits your website or visits your school. This is the way they see you, is through your website. So I'm just going to maximize this and show you, this is our video that really talks about who we are. So once you go to our website, this is the first thing you see, where we talk about the culture, where we talk about the core principles, so it's heard from everybody. The Tampa Prep Athletic Department is redefining what it means to be a successful student athlete, and we're leading the conversation on what's most innovative for all athletes. We believe it's much more than wins and losses, which is why we focus on process over outcome. We're the first and only school in the entire nation where every head coach holds a mental performance mastery certification. This not only sets us apart from our competitors, it's proof that everything we do
is about what's best for our students. Our student athletes forge lasting relationships with their coaches, finding encouragement, acceptance, empowerment that extends far beyond the athletic venues. With more than 20 varsity teams holding more than 60 individual and team state championships, our mission is simple yet powerful: Terps for life. We take pride in our 15 core principles that serve as a template to define who we are. Those 15 core principles are:
trust the process.
Team, together everybody achieves more.
Success, Terps for life.
Respect, win with dignity, lose with grace.
Service, higher purpose and self.
Responsibility, E plus R equals O, control your response.
Effort, all in, all the time.
Relentless, always on the attack.
Toughness, embrace and overcome adversity.
Productive, pushing forward to complete quality work.
Present body, present mind. Be where your feet are.
Sportsmanship, humility and gratitude, and victory and defeat.
Excellence, pursue your personal best.
Energy, bring the juice.
Process, trust the process. It's the pathway to success.
Go red, go gold. Terps today, Terps for life.
And with that, just a hype video, which I don't need to show you guys, but that just shows that what we allow every athlete, every parent, every stakeholder, everyone that's interested in going to our website to see what our culture is like, and it shares the core principles there. And the last thing I would say that with the marketing part is, I started a podcast this year, and it's a daily podcast. And I would suggest if anybody's interested in doing that, the daily podcast is a lot of effort. And I think I oversold myself when it was a challenge for my headmaster to do it every day. And Brian really pushed me to do it every day. You can get it done, but you do need to set a lot of time aside to make sure you have the content. So the daily podcast is a reminder every day to our athletes, to those that call in, where we talk about the core principles and the culture at Tampa Prep. So the last thing I'll do before I answer questions, if anybody has them, is just kind of share the podcast with you, and just the first one where it talks about what that podcast is going to do.
And again, also, as you're digging that up, Chris,
Terrapins, and welcome back to another Terps for Life podcast. This is Director of Athletics Chris Lavoie, and today I want to talk to you about a book called The Cubs Way by Tom Verducci. The Cubs Way discusses the overall success of the 2016 Chicago Cubs, who eventually became the World Series.
Chris, go ahead and pause that if you would. So that's your most recent, one of the more recent ones about the Cubs Way. You were going to play one, I think, at the beginning that kind of introduces that. But if you want to stop sharing your screen and then share it again, because right now all we see is your website, maybe you can kind of show us where we can find the Terps for Life podcast. But while you're doing that, if you stop sharing your screen and then reshare, for all of our coaches on the call, if you go into the chat, so I just posted a link to two things. I sent a link to that Terps for Life video that Chris just showed, and it's in Google Drive, so you can download that, so that you have a model of a video that you can show all your coaches' meetings, all your parent meetings. You can put out on social media. You can put on your website. It's going to describe your core principles. And what better way to market and brand your athletic department or your program or your business than with your clients, in this case, Chris's athletes, talking about the Terps for Life core principles and MVP process. I also posted a link to the Terps for Life podcast, which I listen to as a part of my daily routine. It's tremendous. And I posted a link to that inside of our chat as well. So you can get that inside of Apple Podcasts or whatever it is you listen to podcasts. I'm also going to post in our chat a link to, I had a couple questions come in for it already, a link to that LA Rams compass and also the pictures from Chris's weight room. So I'm going to post those here, Chris, and turn it back to you.
Yeah, I don't need to play that. You put the podcast in there. It really is just, like I said, it just highlights who we are, our core principles, and the culture that we have at Tampa Prep. And I guess I would summarize just by saying, if I had to say, do this or take this, 5 steps to achieve a culture, it would be 1, hire a consultant. I always think it's best if you can bring somebody else in to walk you and your coaches or your stakeholders through this process. 2 would be to get the Google survey from all your stakeholders of what's important to them. I think it's a little bit different with business versus school, because if you're a business CEO, you kind of have the vision and mission of what you want to do with your business. I think a school is a little bit different because you have so many team stakeholders that I think it should be a process that you all go through. 3 would be to gather data and get the form from the core principles and then develop the core principles of mission from the template of the MVP process. 4 would be to share that MVP with everybody involved, because by sharing it and making it visual, you now have spaced repetition or daily repetition. 5 would be market, market, market. If you don't see it every day, you're going to lose the sight of what that is. So that's why I said our weight room has all of our core principles. We use our website, we use social media, everything is hashtagged. So it's a daily reminder of the core principles and of our culture. And last part of it is accountability. You know, it's extremely important when you go through coaching evaluations that you ask about not just the wins and losses, the management part of it, but how they're incorporating the culture and the core principles into their season. And you will get pushback on that of, I don't have time. And for me, that's just not a great answer. You do have time. We all have the same time. You know, 95% people spend, coaches put on X's and O's and strategy. And I think that you need to put a lot more into culture so that you can have not just those short-term results I talked about, but much more longer results. So the last part of it is accountability. And I would end by saying the secret to success is ASA, right? Awareness of where you are right now and where you want to go. Where are you as an athletic department or as a coach, and where do you want to get to? 2 is the strategy part of that. The strategy is the MVP process to get there. 3 is action, and put that into action. And I put another A on there, being accountability, because if you're not holding each other accountable, whether it be your team, your coaches, or yourself, then you're going to lose sight of what your culture really is.
So make sure I got that right, Chris. ASAA, awareness, strategy, action, and accountability.
Yeah, I think you have ASA. I added the other A there. So I have awareness, strategy, action, and then accountability is the last piece of that.
Love that. So for our coaches on the call here, I want to make sure we got time for questions. So Chris, I appreciate you going through there, and we'll get to some of the questions that have come in here on our chat. Some of those come to me directly. So I'm going to go through and kind of process these and share these with you. Also want our coaches here on the call live to know that I am kind of trying to, as Chris is talking, collect some of what he's talking about. And I'm going to put a link here. Instead of linking to everything individually, like I've done in the chat, I'm going to put a link to all the files. So everyone in meeting, all files in this folder. Boom. So inside of that folder, if I share my screen, if you click on that link that I just posted in the chat, that's going to bring you to this folder here. And inside of this folder, you'll see the compass. You'll see the pictures of the walls from Chris's weight room. You're going to see a copy of his Tampa Prep MVP process, just like we talked about with Mike Bahoon last week, or last time we had a Coaching Matters call where we talked about leadership through the 10 pillars, and we spent a lot of time with MVP. You have a template you can use here. And we also in there have his video. So if you wanted to have this video, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself here. If you wanted to have this video to be able to, show somebody who runs the video department at your school to say, hey, I want a video that can display our core principles, that video is going to be here for you to be able to show.
The Tampa Prep Athletic Department is redefining what it means to be a successful student athlete.
Also here is that survey. So the survey, if you click on this, and you're only going to have view access. So when you click on this survey, you're going to want to go, actually in our folder, you're going to want to right click and say, make a copy. You're going to, once you make a copy, then you can edit that and you can change it to be your high school. But all of the questions on there are going to be basically the same survey that I used with Tampa Prep to help them identify the mission, the vision, the core principles. So one of the things that Chris kind of ran over, I think trying to be respectful of your time here that I want to revisit because I thought it was so good and so impressive was, Chris, if you remember the first day we were there, I said to you, I said, hey man, let's come up. You've got these 15 core principles. I'm going to have all your student athletes memorize these core principles using hand signals in the next 30 minutes. And you looked at me and laughed like there's no way. What happened on that day?
Yeah, you and I spent about, 5 to 10 minutes in my office and developed the hand signals for every athlete, for us to remember them, because we just did them that morning, and for every athlete to remember. We then had the entire student athlete body come into I think it was the art center or the library or somewhere. And Brian knocked out in 5 minutes. I think every athlete on campus had those hand signals and remembered what our core principles were. The best part of that with the hand signals was that we had a fall baseball game, I think the next day, and one of our players hit a double to the gap and he got to second base and he just put his fingers up, and you can't see me. I don't think he was going success, success, success. So we had hand signals for every single core principle. Brian ran through them with them so that we were then able to have them remember these core principles within 5 to 10 minutes max.
Yeah. And here's where, when you're establishing core principles like this, you want to put them to a picture or an acronym or a hand signal so that they become memorable. And in Heads Up Baseball 2, Ken Ravizza talks about 3 steps to ownership. Okay, here's the 3 steps to ownership. Step 1, I know it. Step 2, I do it. Step 3, I own it. And as an AD, as a leader, as a coach, we all want the people that we're working with and leading to own our culture, but they can't own and they can't do what they don't know. So I get asked all the time, why is it important that my athletes memorize the core principles? Because they can't live it if they don't know it. And the fastest way to get them to know it is to be intentional with how you teach it. And if you understand from reading books like Moonwalking with Einstein, or going through a program by a guy named Ron White, who was the United States memory champion, it's called, Memory in a Month. And it's like 10 minutes a day audio program to learn how to teach people to memorize and memorize yourself. And I've listened to that program probably 5 times in my life in the car, and I use it daily to memorize names, to memorize content, to be on a stage and be able to present without having to look at notes. And one of the things he says is, if you want to memorize, it takes 3 things: location, picture, meaning. So if you'd write this down, this is how you're going to get your people to memorize their core principles: location, picture, meaning. So the location, as you watch this video, is the 2 hands. The picture, when they do this, success. When they do this, when they were doing guns like this, it's relentless, right? So what we did is we sat there and said, okay, we got 15 core principles. Well, it's one principle 15 times. And we want to make a hand signal to teach what those hand signals are. So the reason why hand signals become important is because they're a picture. And in case in point, this past weekend, I'm at the Waste Management Open in Phoenix, the golf tournament. And I run into 4 SMU football players who I haven't seen in 5 years since Chad Morris left there and went to Arkansas. So they're there for a bachelor party and they're hammered. And as we're there, I see them and I'm like, hey guys, do you remember the core principles of SMU football? And they're like, man, I haven't thought about this in like 5 years. I'm like, good, what are they? And the guy goes, accountability, energy and work ethic, physical and mental toughness, family, integrity, confidence, belief, and faith that our process will bring results. We are a band of one-play warriors. We are SMU. And said it like his birthday. How did he know it? Because of hand signals. How do I know it? Not having been there in 5 years? Because of hand signals. So Chris, you'll have athletes that will come back to Tampa Prep in 10 years after graduating, and they will remember that this pointing to the ground means present. They'll know that making a staircase means process. They'll know that taking their hands like this means productive. They'll know that this is energy. They'll know that bicep curls is effort. They'll know that this is excellence as they're coming back to me here. They'll know that this means respect, right? They'll know that guns like this means relentless. They'll know that bouncing basketballs like this means responsibility, because you will have given them the picture. So when you see this video, this is how you're going to get people to remember your culture and your core principles, is you have to tie them to a picture. Let's take a look.
The Athletic Department is redefining what it means to be a successful student athlete, and we're leading every head vacation, everything, encouragement, teams, 15 core
process.
15 core principles.
Those 15
triangle
core
trust.
principles are
Trust.
So that you're going to see each of these athletes do the picture so that they know the core principle.
The process.
Team. Together, everybody achieves more.
Success starts for life.
Respect. Win with dignity, lose with grace.
Service. Higher purpose and self.
Responsibility. E plus
Right? It's
R
like bouncing a basketball, responsibility.
equals O. Control your response.
Effort. All in, all the time.
Relentless. Always on the attack.
Toughness. Embrace and
Right? Boom. So there it is. Somebody standing up like a fighter. Toughness. Their hands are up. So what it is you create the pictures so that they can remember the core principle. I know it, I do it, I own it. If I want to own it, I got to know it. If I'm ever going to do it, I got to know it. And we know it by understanding location, picture, meaning. It works for college football, it works for high school athletics. So I thought that was a pretty good example of how you're going to be able to memorize the core principles. So questions that come in here, I'm gonna go to those questions here. So first question comes in. He says, Chris, it's from Al. Al says, how do you bring your principles to alive versus just having them on a poster throughout the school?
Well, I'm lucky. My headmaster was an All-American in lacrosse, so he has an athletic background, and I'm the third athletic director in Tampa Prep history. So, he has empowered the athletic directors there, including myself, to kind of do our thing, to run the department, and he does not micromanage. The great part is that I've had to have very little buy-in from him. However, in year one, like I said, the first thing I would suggest you do is to bring in a consultant that's going to help you sell the product. For me, that was Brian. So I brought Brian in. We went through this entire MVP process, and our headmaster at that point in time said, well done, and he had full buy-in right then and there. I've also been on the other end where I had a principal say if she could take athletics out of high schools, she would. And I will fully admit there was no buying in there, which is one reason why I left and went somewhere else.
So anything else, Chris, that you do in terms of like you do, so the hand signals helps with buy-in, the podcast every day helps with buy-in, the having each of your teams pick 3 to 5 core principles that they then display in the wrestling room or in the gym or at their baseball field helps with buy-in. Is there anything else strategy wise you feel like you use, whether it be bands or challenge coins or anything that you've used?
Yeah, we use both of those. So we have the bands that has the one on it. We have the one word process. That I think we've kind of lost a little bit, but the coaches have that access to them. But really, it comes from the top down and involve all your stakeholders. So social media is important. That's why I said we hashtag everything with our core principles and our mission of Terps for Life. The podcast is a daily reminder of what our core principles and culture is. And then our headmaster, I've also had him on several of the podcasts. I bring in athletes to be a part of the podcast, bring in coaches to be a part of the podcast. What I found is that when just I speak, no one listens, or not as many people listen. When you involve an athlete, all their friends will say, "Oh, we're gonna listen to what Brian Cain said today on the podcast." So you get a lot more views that way. So it's really, for me, I would say, involve more people than just yourself, and that's shared. Like I said, that's the ownership part of it.
Yeah, and I think that becomes a critical part. Is like you talked about with the with the survey where you send that off to people and get a chance to ask them what they think the athletic department should be about. And they get to participate in that. And then there's a little bit of ownership and they're less likely to get down on it. So one of the questions comes in from Coach Brewer. He said, what was that memory program you were talking about? I missed the name. It's called Memory in a Month by Ron White. Ron White is a United States memory champion, and the program is called Memory in a Month. Question from Coach Sato at Bingham High School in Utah. He says, Chris, do you meet with the entire coaching staff of all the sports at once, or do you meet with them each separately when introducing the aspects of the culture that you're promoting in the athletic department?
Great question. So at the beginning of the year, we have an all coaches meeting. And I'm not going to share a screen now, but basically I have a folder where every head coach has access to it. So inside there is the template, the culture, the MVP process. They also have a folder for their sport. So yes, I meet with every head coach. We go through big picture stuff. What is our big department mission, vision, core principles, and then I meet with every head coach in season once a week, out of season usually once a month. And I just, we discuss where are you at with everything. Culture is a big part of that though. Where are you at with your MVP process? Where are you at with picking your core principles? And they usually have them because they know that we're going to make a poster for it. So they do have deadlines. So beginning of the season, big picture, a lot of housekeeping items with coaches, in season once a week to assist, to listen, and to also talk culture there as well.
Awesome. And want to just take a minute here to again thank Fundraising University and their CEO, Mike Bahoon, who's an assistant baseball coach at the University of Michigan. And just want to say, Mike, good luck this weekend as college baseball is starting across the country. I know you guys are playing in a big tournament down at Globe Life, the home of the Texas Rangers. And I just want to let, coaches or professionals know that if you're looking for a career transition, right? Into, you know, that next thing after teaching or that next thing after coaching, or you're looking for that business that you can start while you're doing both coaching and teaching. You know, Fundraising University is hosting what we call our transition program on February 21st. It's at 5 p.m. Central. And we're just going to talk about how can you transition into being an ambassador coach? How can you transition into being a franchise owner? How can you transition into creating another income while you're doing what you love to do, which is to coach and teach? So if you're interested in that, look inside of our chat, just email Lindsay at LDIDONNA, Lindsay Diadana at fundraisingu.net, and we'll get you onto that call. It's going to be about a half an hour call on the 21st of February, 5 p.m. Central, to talk about that. And if you can't make it live, just like with all these Coaching Matters calls, email Lindsay, again, LDIDONNA at fundraisingu.net, and we'll make sure we send you the recording. Next question comes in. Chris, is there anything that you know now you wish you knew at the beginning of creating this culture that you would have done differently?
Simplified it. And I think I said that. So I think 15 core principles was too much. And like I said, it's trial and error. So this is the first time I've fully gone through the MVP process where there was the buy-in. I think when I first started this, I pushed it, said, here it is. So what I wish I did was twofold. One, involved all stakeholders on day one to make them a part of the process. And two is simplify. I do think 15, although we know them, I think it's a lot. So coach's feedback was it's too much for us to do. So now in year 3 or 4, we're now saying, okay, you don't have to do all of them. Pick which ones are important to you now. Next year, pick which ones are important to you now. Because as coaches, you all know, you have different teams every year. You could be senior led, you could be freshman led. And that may mean you have different core principles that are going to drive you to success. So one, make sure you involve your stakeholders. I wish I did that. And two, make sure it's simplified.
Question for you, Chris. If you have 15 and 3 years ago, you tried to get your coaches to teach them all and it was too much, now that you have 15 and they get to pick between 3 and 5, do you feel like 15 is good because they get to choose and they get to pick from different core principles each year? So technically you could coach there for 10 years and not have the same set of core principles for any year and be able to change it up? Or would you, if you could rewind time, rather go and say, hey, we're going to go Terps, and it's trust, energy, relentless, process, and selfless. And those are our 5 core principles. And that's what we're teaching throughout the department. What would you just go with 5, or do you actually think that having 15 gives your coaches more flexibility? So you like that more? Unpack that for us.
I think both, Brian. So I think that the 15 certainly gives you options, right? So you may not buy into trust. You know, we already have that. So let's focus on the other 4. If you want to have everybody know all 15, I think it's difficult if with 15 of them, you know, but it does give you the option to choose what you want there. If you take the 5, you're stuck with those 5 no matter what. So I could see both sides of that. I think that 15, if you look in big picture, 15 is a lot to learn and a lot to dive into, especially in year 1, year 2, maybe even year 3. You may never touch some of those if you're only taking 5 per year. But at the same time, if you only have 5, you're kind of stuck there. So I don't think I have a great answer for that. I like the options right now, but I think it's very difficult for me to say every team knows all 15 of these if they're not focusing in on those right now or during that season.
Another question comes in. It says, Chris, do you also meet with the assistant coaches, or is that the head coach's responsibility?
So I actually treat this as a business model. And this may be right or wrong, but this is the way this is my philosophy as an athletic director. I tell every head coach, I'm the CEO of Starbucks. And each one of you is buying a franchise of Starbucks. So what we're going to do is have that business model, that business philosophy, which is the MVP. We all have the same mission, Terps for life. We all have the same core principles, but you as buying into a franchise of Starbucks, you are going to oversee your coaching staff, or you're going to oversee your employees. So the head coaches are the ones that meet with me. They then trickle down and meet with their assistant coaches. So I would say that I have very little interaction with assistant coaches in my office. All my time with assistant coaches would be out in the fields or on the court or in the athletic setting. So they do not hear this from me. They hear it from the head coaches, but they have access to everything, of all the folders that we share with head coaches.
Awesome. Any other further questions for Chris Lavoie? He's the athletic director at Tampa Prep and Tampa, Florida. We're talking about how to clarify and implement, how to establish and enhance a winning and championship culture. And a question comes in from Coach Al. He says, Chris, do you maintain the connection of your principals with your student athletes in their respective off seasons?
We are a very small school. And we have a lot of multi-sport athletes because of that. So I would say that there are very few off-season athletes because, like I said, even when they're, let's just say it's a one-sport athlete, even in their off-season, they're in the performance center with our head strength coach, and he is pushing those core principles every day. He gives out every week, it's called the no limbo dog of the week. And that no limbo dog of the week, it's a big chain and it has a terp on it. And that is to someone that's living above the line and fulfilling some of our core principles. So he, on a yearly basis, including the summer, gives out that award and is always pushing the core principles. So it isn't always coming from me as well. Like I said, we have a coaching staff. In the off season, he has our athletes year round. So it comes from him.
Awesome. And then Chris, how do you combat the apathy that coaches might have toward the process? Like the coach that says, hey, this is good for you, but not for me.
Yeah, that happened in year one. And that's why I say it's not a me thing, right? That's why this whole buy-in from stakeholders and getting input from stakeholders and the Google survey this isn't a Chris Lavoie thing. This is what you as head coaches developed and designed to be important to you, not me. So it's not a me versus you thing. So what I tell coaches is you can either buy into what you guys think is important, or it's just not going to be a good fit. And truth be told, I had to let 3 coaches go the first year because they said, that's just not for me. We want to do what we were doing. And my response was, well, let's look at the process and the success rate, and I don't want to go into wins and losses, but let's look at, are your numbers growing or going down? And every program was dropping in numbers and success rate. And again, I hate to look at wins and losses as a part of that, but it's not a me thing. You guys developed this. You guys said this was important to you. We just gave you the template. So there is a buy-in here. This is what we are now doing, and either you're going to buy in or not. And it's not my choice, it's your choice. So it's not a firing. It's like, hey, if you can't buy into this, then we'll find somebody else who can.
Awesome. On that note, Chris Lavoie, hey, it's Valentine's Day. You got a wife, you got kids. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy, hectic schedule to join us here on the Coaching Matters group coaching program and talking about clarify and implement a winning culture. Thanks for being with us, coaches. Thanks for joining us. Our next Coaching Matters call is going to be 2 weeks from tonight. That's going to be Monday, February 28th. We're going to feature a lifetime 300 hitter in Major League Baseball, Sean the Mayor Casey, and going to be talking about mental performance strategies and creating an edge. So how can you create an edge through mental performance? And Sean, having been one of the top baseball hitters in the game and the analyst for the MLB Network, this will be a call that is not just for baseball coaches. This will be a call that's for all coaches, because what Sean is going to share with you can be applied into any sport, but also can be applied into any aspect of business. I think when you're talking about mindset and creating an edge, it's going to be across the board. Very similar to the principles that I would share with you here on our Coaching Matters call will be the same principles I share with UFC world champions, share with Cy Young Award winners, share with Division I college athletes. They're applied maybe a little bit differently based off of the context of where that athlete's at. But the principles that Chris shared with you tonight around establishing and implementing a culture will work for you. They've worked for him. They'll work in business. They'll work in sports. Most importantly, it's going to work in life. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for all that you do. And Coaching Matters. Let's dominate today. Thanks for being here, everybody. Take care.